Game 1, Kingsley's Adventure. Part 1, Background. Released in 1999 from British development studio Psygnosis, Kingsley's Adventure is another take on the 3D adventure formula perfected by the Zelda franchise almost 1 year prior. As a game, Kingsley's Adventure demands that you do what is right, join Kingsley's quest to become a true knight, promising 3 of my favorite things in combat, exploration, and platforming. Kingsley also boasts about its impressive 41 individual music tracks, 50 interactive characters, and 5-part tutorial. I guess they ran out of interesting things to put on the back of the case. With developer Psygnosis being a company that I'm unfortunately familiar with, I'm going into Kingsley's Adventure with cautious optimism. I mean, how bad can the game really be? Just look at this cute little guy. He's plastered everywhere. Part 2, My Playthrough. Upon starting the game, we are met with a cutscene. Here, a group of young animals are being given a puppet show telling the legend of the great knight Kingsley. Our story begins with the evil rat chef wizard Bad Custard stealing the most powerful magic tome in the kingdom and using it to convert the 4 heroes of the realm into his own personal dark knights. With the future uncertain, all hope rests on a plucky young squire by the name of Kingsley. With the stage set, the cutscene fades and we're given our first moments of control over Kingsley, but oh no. This game uses tank controls. Well, we can say goodbye to the platforming being good. Before advancing out of the starting room, we are told by a rabbit by the name of Auntie Adelaine to proceed to Old Wrinkles, the man who will give us the aforementioned 5-part tutorial. She gives us a shield and sends us on our way. After a quick dip in the tub, we make our way to Old Wrinkles, who sends us into the trial rooms. The first trial is basic platforming, or it would have been basic if the controls weren't so stiff and unwieldy. We make the jumps after a few attempts and are rewarded with a shiny dagger before moving on to the second trial. Entering the next room, we are met by a drill sergeant who teaches us how to use our weapon and shield. Here we learn that shields negate 100% of damage and attacks can stun lock enemies. I guess melee combat is already solved as well. We move on to trial number 3, Archery. In the next room, we see 2 moving targets and are shown how to use our crossbow. Zooming into first-person mode, we fumble around for a while trying to get our bearings because, ew, inverted aim. After shooting the targets and a third one later on, a hidden wall opens up, netting us the cherry key, which we use to access the final leg of the trial. In this coming room, we are tasked with pulling a lever, pushing a block, and stepping on a button. Basic puzzle stuff, you know. With the puzzle room completed, we make our way into the green teleporter and back to Old Wrinkles, who congratulates us on becoming a knight. But wait, hold up. Platforming, melee combat, ranged combat, puzzles. Hey, there are only 4 tutorial quests. I was promised 5. The back of the case lied to me. 0 out of 10, unplayable game. With the lacking tutorial finished, we are told to go and visit the king and queen, who will give us our first task to becoming a true knight. Upon meeting the king, he wastes no time telling us, a child, that we are the only hope for Seatown, and to contact a man named Briny Jim in said town for further information. The queen then hands us the grape key to the library. We head through the basement and are off onto our first world of the game, Seatown. In Seatown, we begin to get a taste of the colorful cast of characters that Kingsley has to offer. After interrogating a few townsfolk, we learn that Jim is the owner of a local bar called the Salty Sea Dog. After locating the bar, we find Jim, who informs us that his beloved ship has been stolen by the evil Captain Gallagher, cutting off all trade lines to the town. It is thus up to us to stop the captain and save the town. Jim then unlocks the back door of the bar, allowing us to enter the lighthouse, our first dungeon. Now in the basement of the lighthouse, we see what the first dungeon has to offer. The first few rooms are very similar, being copies of each other with extra obstacles being added each time, from enemies to wall-mounted cannons to swinging anchors over pits. Jumping over the pits was a bit of a struggle, but we made it through with little issue. In the next room, we start to get a little bit more involved when it comes to dungeon design. Here we have a room requiring us to avoid moving barrels and pull levers to get keys to open doors. Nothing too complex, but we take our first death to a weirdly large hitbox on a barrel, forcing us to restart the whole room. Clearing the room on our second attempt, we make our way to the first hurdle of the game. Wonder what that could be. Well, if you guessed platforming, you were right. In the next room, we find a series of rafts positioned directly in the line of fire of more wall-mounted cannons. While this might not sound too bad, the way the momentum system in this game works, we need to start running from a position behind the line of fire of the cannons, meaning that if we stop, either we have to back up, getting us hit, or reset the room by falling in the water. If that wasn't bad enough, getting hit by a cannon mid-run removes a small amount of momentum from Kingsley, meaning that if we are hit, we will likely fall in the water and have to start over anyway. We lose 2 more lives here, but make it through to the teleporter at the end of the room and onto the final stretch of the lighthouse. Here we are asked to scale a rocky spire while avoiding more rolling barrels and fighting enemies on the tight ledges. At the top, we find a teleporter that takes us to the base of the spire, where a pool floaty can take us to the first boss fight, Captain Gallagher. Gallagher as a fight is extremely simplistic. Hit him in the soft part of his tummy when he's up close, and slowly walk left or right to avoid his cannonballs while he's far. After a few cycles, we defeat Gallagher no problem, freeing Jim's ship. Riding the boat back to Seatown, Jim welcomes us and thanks us for our efforts by giving us a new axe and some ancient armor. He then sends us on our way with no further direction. It's at this point I figure we should return back to the Royals and inform them of our victory in Seatown. Back at the castle, the king tells us that the life of a knight is never restful and gives us our next task, going to the village of Porluck, which is being besieged by a dragon. The queen then opens the courtyard and we make our way onto the second world, Porluck. Upon arriving in the village of Porluck, we are immediately accosted by a swordfish who tells us that he's moving back to Seatown because the evil dragon Snuff keeps stealing the village's food supplies. After attempting to talk to a few of the other villagers, nobody wishes to speak with us because they're all too hungry. We then explore the area a little and find a structure shaped like a dragon wearing a bib holding a fork and knife. We enter the dragon's stomach and the bib closes behind us like a door, locking us literally in the belly of the beast. This dungeon begins with a heavier focus on puzzles, which is greatly appreciated. Room 1 has us pressing a button to shut off the fire-spitting snakes in a doorway. Room 2 has us pressing a button to make a key appear needed to unlock a door. Unlike Room 2, Room 3 is a little bit more involved and has us pressing 2 buttons to get a key instead. Next is some dangerous platforming to get a key, which admittedly takes us a while because of the controls, and finally some basic combat, netting us the final key, which gives us access to a teleporter, marking around the halfway point of the dungeon. Unfortunately, things go downhill from here as we encounter a new gimmick, green slime. Now, in most games when you see green slime, you might think that it would poison you or slow you down. But Kingsley decides to take that trope and turn it on its head, because this slime gives you ice physics. So if the platforming wasn't bad enough with regular controls, they had to go and add slippery platforms into the mix. Fortunately for us, our introduction to this mechanic is in a room where failing to make a jump doesn't kill us, but only wastes some time. After an embarrassing amount of attempts in this extremely long room, we make it to the other side and into the teleporter. The next room is thankfully more tame, giving us a memorization puzzle on a piano, followed by regular tight platforming over instant death pits through fire-breathing snakes and swinging blades. You know, tame stuff. In the next area, we find a key in a cage, followed by a long hallway filled with traps. At the end of the hallway is a switch to open the cage, meaning that we have to run through the traps forward and then backwards. Using the key, we find another teleporter, which takes us into yet more puzzles. The first of these puzzles is stepping on 4 buttons in a specific order to lower a central platform, getting us, you guessed it, another key. This key, however, takes us into Snuff's personal pantry, a dark maze-like room where we find a wall lever that opens the cell to Tartrazine, a rat who has been living off of Snuff's leftovers. Freeing Mr. Rat, we get the key to Snuff's personal dining room and make our way to confront the dragon. Entering the dining room, Snuff threatens to eat us, so we begin fighting. The fight goes exactly the same way that Gallagher did. Hit him in the belly when he's close, dodges projectiles when he's far. With Snuff defeated, we collect his fork and knife, but we aren't done with the dungeon quite yet. We have to return the food supply to the town. This entails a small platforming challenge on conveyor belts. This challenge is a breeze compared to the slime earlier, but it's no pushover. Once out of the dungeon, we meet up with the village's blacksmith, who smelts down Snuff's tableware to make us a new sword and some heavy-duty gloves. We then make our way back to the castle to receive our next quest from the royals. Once in the throne room, the king tells us that the beer monks of Rosary Village are acting strange and wants us to investigate the potential contaminations in their root beer supplies. With a new sword in hand, we head back to the courtyard and into World 3. Upon entering Rosary Village, we are told that we need to do a short series of collection quests in order to enter the Beer Monks Abbey. These quests have us getting some coffee from Hera's coffee shop to sober up the guards, to enter the mayor's house to get a password from the mayor to give to a different guard to get into the abbey. Once inside the abbey, a monk named Tim tells us to speak with Abbot Harry about the poisoned root beer. Finding Harry in his office, he informs us that the root beer has indeed been poisoned and we must go below the abbey to the catacombs, where we will find 3 special herbs that can be used to neutralize the poison. We head downstairs and start the spookiest dungeon yet. Here in the catacombs, we find a very large and open room that, because of the PS1's draw distance, is exceptionally dark. After a little exploration, we find that the dungeon is actually just 4 rooms in a square, an entryway, and 3 self-contained puzzles, each housing an herb. Puzzle 1 has us pushing barrels from inside a pit to uncover colored Roman numerals 1 through 5 on the floor. Above the pit, we see 5 pillars with buttons the same colors as the numbers we have just found. We press the buttons in the correct order, lowering our first herb from the ceiling. Puzzle 2 has us platforming over water, where each platform we land on causes a new one to pop out. At the end of these jumps, we press a button opening the cage housing herb number 2. In the final puzzle room, we find 3 crypt-shaped blocks of different sizes with key symbols on top of them, as well as 3 squares on the ground of similar sizes to the blocks. Lining up each block to its corresponding spot on the ground opens the cage, getting us the 3rd and final herb. On our way out of the dungeon in the non-puzzle entry room, we are met by Monk Tim, who reveals himself to be Clarence Darklord Jr., apprentice demon, and challenges us to a fight. This may come as a shock to some, but this fight is extremely similar to the first 2 bosses: dodge at a distance and attack up close. With Clarence defeated, we bring the herbs to Abbot Harry, who thanks us with an upgraded crossbow as well as some snazzy new boots. With this short and easy leg of the journey completed, we repeat the game loop, heading back to the royals. Ignoring our fancy new shoes, the king tells us that we must act urgently, for the wizard cornflower of Aphasia has had his magical robes stolen, and it's up to us to retrieve them. Being unable to say no to the king, we head on to World 4. Entering Aphasia, we see that the overworld design has begun to disappear altogether, with this area being nothing more than an empty field with an old wizard and a locked tower. When talking to the old wizard Cornflower, he tells us to go retrieve his robes from the castle ruins and opens the locked door to the tower. Entering the ruins leads us to our next dungeon, the only real challenge of the game. The dungeon begins with us descending down a spiral room with trap walls and enemies that will try to push us into instant death pits. After taking a quick death to fall damage, we make our way to the next room. Here we encounter a series of narrow platforms with swinging saw blades, as well as gaps just large enough to make platforming awkward. We fail to make the final jump, but it's okay, because we find a switch on the wall and open a secondary path. Exploring this route, we find an archery room, which, after completing, gets us the banana key. Backtracking to the platforms, we find that we needed the banana key to progress forward. Guess failing that jump wasn't that bad after all. We once again fail to make the jumps required in this room and take 2 more deaths before finally making it to the next section. Here we have another small archery puzzle and more tight platforming over instant death pits. I'm sensing a theme here. In the following section, we are faced with a truly nasty challenge, a long gauntlet of tight jumps between swinging blades and through dart traps. Before we can even figure out what this room has to offer, we take another death and our first game over of the playthrough. Unfortunately, the penalty for a game over is having to repeat the entire dungeon from the beginning. Luckily, we were still relatively early on, so it wasn't a huge loss. On attempt number 2, we take things slowly and carefully, making it to the other side of the room, allowing us to find that the backs of the swinging blades are targets for us to shoot. Upon shooting these targets, unbeknownst to us, the wall behind us lowers and 2 enemy archers begin to open fire. We take another death and have to do the room again, a 3rd time. On this attempt, we make it back to the archers and dispatch them with only 1 HP remaining. Behind the archer's nest, we find 3 buttons which, after pressing, a ticking sound starts. Oh boy, it's a timer. We now have to do the room backwards under time pressure before the gate closes. Somehow we manage to do this first try. Sadly, the annoying jumps don't stop there as we enter the next area, a series of long hallways with switches at the end. Each switch drops one of the multiple barriers blocking our path forward. To be specific, we needed to do 5 paths forward and back to finally get the pineapple key required to enter the next room. Here we have a single room with a path leading to a key. Upon picking up the key, a switch is revealed and dangerous objects appear in the room. After hitting the switch, a button appears and the room once again gets more dangerous. This cycle continues until we are able to find the exit and use the first key we acquired to advance. From here we enter our next challenge, which is just more platforming and archery. This time the platforms have fans constantly pushing us toward yet more instant death pits. After making it past the fans, we enter a room with gondola-like platforms and targets in the distance. Shooting the targets causes the gondolas to begin to move, which means we have to make jumps over moving platforms now. After making way too many stressful jumps, we make it to the next section. Here we get yet more platforming, but this time with a twist. In order to open the next jump, we need to push blocks. To make this more fun, the devs also hid enemies behind some of these blocks, and they can attack you before you can react, pushing you into the instant death water. It's in this room that we take yet another game over and have to redo everything. Again. After 2 hours of attempts, we make it to the other side of this room and are finally able to advance. In the following section, we find ourselves in a square room where many barrel-like objects are rolling around trying to crush us. Our goal is to collect the 4 keys in each corner of the room and bring them to the center. We manage to do this with little issue and make our way to the final room of the dungeon. Here we find a metal platform in the center of a room and targets on the walls. With each target shot, the metal platform raises to the next level and we are swarmed by enemies. Dispatching the enemies with 1 life and 1 HP remaining, we find the teleporter and are taken into the 4th boss fight, Reggie. The fight begins and we can't see the boss because of the draw distance on the PS1, so we decide to try to take a loop around the outside of the map before, bam, a shockwave comes from off screen and we lose our last life. We game over. Devastated, we cope with the fact that we have to redo the dungeon all over again and reluctantly hit try again. But wait, what's this? The boss itself is a checkpoint. The devs are finally giving us a break. The second attempt against Reggie, we learn to jump over his shockwave and avoid his lightning magic. Reggie goes down and we can thankfully say goodbye to this awful, awful tower. Returning to Cornflower, he enchants our shield in exchange for his robe. With the final piece of knight's equipment in hand, we return to the royals. Back at the castle, the queen tells us that we must free the 4 heroes of light from Bad Custard's spell. Thus begins the revisiting of each world. It's at this point that it should be mentioned that each of these revisits to a world could have been done as soon as the world after it had been completed, which means the gloves we received from Poor Luck open the boss in Seatown, the boots from Rosary open Poor Luck, etc. We decided to do our return trip in the same order we took the worlds on the first time, so first up is Seatown. Once in Seatown, we use the knight's gloves to pull the anchored ship in. Entering gets us our first boss, Rex. Rex goes down as easy as Gallagher did and transforms into Sir Will.I.Am, the first of the 4 heroes, freed. Next, on to Poor Luck, where with the help of the boots we're able to get massive uppies and enter the fight with Judas. Judas is a bull, and with some simple sidestepping we're able to defeat him, freeing Sir Rufus. Following that, we head to Rosary Village and use our enchanted shield to create a gym bridge and gain access to Oscar. In this fight, we're required to shoot Oscar using our crossbow, causing him to drop his eggs and spawn enemies. Nothing too hard here. We defeat Oscar and free Sir Gawain. Finally, we make our way back to Aphasia and enter the newly spawned totem pole and begin our fight with Gustav. The final night goes down simply by employing the classic strategy of hit up close, dodge win far. With Sir Orson, the final night, freed, we head back to the royals one last time and inform them of our victory. Without delay, the Queen tells us to go to Skull Island and defeat Bad Custard once and for all. We enter the island and begin our ultimate battle with the rat. This fight is divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 has us stun-locking the boss on the lowest level of the arena with our sword. Phase 2 has us dodging some magic and locking the boss once again on the 2nd tier. And finally, Phase 3 has us chasing down Bad Custard to the center of Tier 3 and knocking him into a vat of soup, ending his reign in terror once and for all. We collect the magic tome and are teleported back to the castle one final time for credits. Kingsley's adventure has officially been beaten. Part 3. Final thoughts. In terms of gameplay, what we have here is an extremely simple experience. From the overworld and dungeon design to puzzle complexity to combat encounters, nothing really jumped out at me as outstanding. And while that could be grounds for a middle-of-the-line score, unfortunately those aspects make up a very small portion of the game. The majority of the experience is filled with miserable controls and frustrating platforming, which easily pulls the score down for me. When it comes to visuals, the game is very bright and colorful, which I love to see, but sadly, much like the rest of the game, it looks very forgettable most of the time, resulting in an experience that feels like an empty children's book. Now, you might be like me and not realize this while playing the game, but this game has some serious bangers in it. When editing this video, I came to realize that the boss themes here are super out of place in the best possible way. From the jazzy whine of Reggie's theme to the high-octane drum and bass action of Rex the Ruthless. Sadly, these tracks aren't heard long enough for you to really appreciate them because the bosses go down in an instant. As for the rest of the game, it's all ambient music, which is fine, but forgettable. Not to mention the back of the case lying once again saying there are 41 tracks in the game, when in reality there are only 25, and 3 of those weren't even used. A game having adventure in the name might make you expect the story to be a little more adventurous, but in actuality it's very simple. A group of royals are expecting the common folks to do their dirty work for their own profit and gain. There's honestly not much to say about the story here. The characters have zero depth, but you don't really expect them to in a game so heavily marketed toward children. When it comes to wow factor, you'll hear me say a lot about a game's uniqueness, and Kingsley's Adventure unfortunately doesn't have any of that. It's a very standard action platformer with combat and not much else. You know exactly what to expect when someone says it's like baby's first 3D Zelda. Lastly, let's cover difficulty. The game is completely trivial with the exception of the platforming, and even with that being so bothersome, the only times that it actually became seriously painful were in the castle ruins. If it weren't for that one dungeon, the game would have been half as long, 90% easier, and still the same quality. With all of that said, Kingsley is a game that lacks in a lot of ways, but doesn't overstay its welcome. While I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who remember this game very fondly from their childhoods, I believe that it might be a game better left in the past. In the end, Kingsley's Adventure took me 6 hours and 21 minutes to complete and was awarded a 3 out of 10 in gameplay, a 5 out of 10 in graphics, a 5 out of 10 in music, a 2 out of 10 in story, a 3 out of 10 in wow factor, a 6 out of 10 in difficulty, and an overall score of a 4 out of 10. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. The PSXpedition is truly a passion project of mine that I've been working on for a few years now. At the time of recording this, I have over 250 games finished. I plan to make videos for each and every one of them. If you want to see the unedited VODs, I will put links to the archive channel for both the full Kingsley playthrough as well as the channel as a whole in the description. Also, if you want to watch me complete these games live or suggest one yourself, I will link my stream down below as well. It would mean the world to me if you could also like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. I've been Uriah, and I hope to see you again on our next step in the PSXpedition.